right. Well, welcome to the School Turnaround Podcast. I am so excited for our next guest, a guest I have been knowing for a very long time, and a person who I just love the work that they have done in education. So our guest for today is Mrs. Kellie Deegear. Ms. Deegear, welcome. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for being here today. I'm glad you were able to make it.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about it.
Yeah. Yes. So, well, what I want to do today, we just want to have a conversation. The whole purpose of the School Turnaround Podcast, as you know, as an educator, school turnaround is real all across
Mhm.
the country. There's a lot of work that goes along with it. And one thing that I'm excited about, I know you know the work. You have been successful at it. You have a documented track record of the success that you had. But given that our platform is pretty large and continues to grow, I would just love for you to start our conversation off today is just introduce yourself, give the viewing audience a little bit of background about your story and how you got to this point in education and some of the work that you've done. And we'll just start our conversation from that point as well.
Okay. So this is year 30 for me in public education. I started off teaching elementary in San Antonio. And then when I got married, my husband wanted to go back to school. So I told him we would just go for 3 years. And then I was moving back to
Of
San
course.
Antonio. But as you know, we've
Right.
never left.
Right.
And then so I started working in Bryan as a curriculum professional development person. Um, and then 2 years of that, I was hired as the principal of the campus. And then from there, I was there for 14 years. I moved to the same district that my own children are in. Um,
Hmm.
Worked at an intermediate school for 3 years as a principal, and then had the opportunity to open up the campus that I'm currently at right now. So this is year 7 for us with this new campus.
That's great. That's great. And since you're joining us from the great state of Texas today, I've really been, proud of the work that you've done because I know, part of your story from the time where I witnessed it. So what I want to do is dive in a little bit and let's talk about having success with school turnaround. So, but before we talk about the success, from a Texas reference, how do you view school turnaround, or how does the state view school turnaround with the academic barometers that you have there? So, how do they measure success of schools as it relates to academic success, and how does school turnaround kind of fit into that?
So I don't know if you're aware, but currently they haven't released our ratings from last year
Yes, yes,
due to,
I've
right.
heard about that.
So, and the way Texas works is they're preparing the accountability manual for how we will be rated or scored. But that won't be completed until after the students are assessed on the standardized test. So I feel like, it's a standardized test. In the district that I'm currently in, we don't put a lot of effort or focus on that test. But the
Sure.
truth is, our kids, I remember you actually teaching us or talking to us about how they determine the number of jail cells that were going to be built based on those
Right.
standardized scores. So it is something that our students need to be successful on. Um, so for the previous district I was in, it was very much a focus of the district.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because, as in Texas, if you're not performing, if all of your subpopulations are not performing, then you're in danger of the state coming in and taking over.
Right, right. And so, based on that, because in every state there's always a political lens with it and then some reality in the school district that filters down to the school. So, where I want to start our conversation for today is let's talk about from your seat as a school leader, when you kind of envision the success that you had in your previous school district and now in your current school district, you had in mind in your vision some successful uh, initiatives that you wanted to implement. So talk to us a little bit when you kind of assess the situations that were going on over your career in the different places that you've done. How do you kind of look out and view at that and kind of envision what you want to do as it relates to school turnaround or school improvement, and with the focus on increasing the academic achievement of the school?
So in my previous district, I feel like, to be completely honest, we were first looking for some great silver bullet, like a package deal. What can we do
Hmm.
to help students with behavior and academics? Because we were struggling in that area. But ultimately, I think it came down to having strong relationships, one with the people in the building,
Hmm.
because through the course of of the turnaround, you have to have hard conversations with your colleagues, and you have to be open
Sure.
and willing to have those conversations. But then, of course, having relationships with the students and the parents and the community. And then the other side of that, though, is high expectations. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, relationships and high expectations sounds easy, but it's hard to get to that point because
Sure.
everybody's idea of their expectations is different. And so I feel like at the elementary school, when I was principal there, I needed to have the strong relationships with the community to help guide me on what was necessary the support the kids needed. I mean, I could share an example if that would be helpful, but
Sure. Yes, please do.
okay, so in public ed, you probably have experienced this too. There's a lot of deficit approach to, like, that child
Yep.
is at risk or free lunch,
Yep.
or however we talk about data, and you hear a lot of that. And I think what I started to learn is that that causes assumptions.
Hmm.
Our assumptions are made about families and students, and then low expectations, because I
Yep.
think sometimes teachers would feel sorry for a student, oh, well, they need more
Yep.
support. We can't do this. So we really wanted to move towards more of an asset based approach. And one of
Sure.
the ways that we did that was we had a scavenger hunt, like a community scavenger hunt that we did before Meet the Teacher night. And so the
Hmm.
community was aware of it. Parents were aware of it. It was like an exciting time. Points if you saw a former student, points if you saw current students.
Sure.
We met pastors. But I think the key to it was that first we had the teachers reflect on what they thought the experience would be like. And you would realize that new teachers would, they experienced some, like, discomfort and fear. They were worried
Hmm.
about going out into the community. And
Right.
so we were careful about who we paired people up with and that type of thing. But when they came back from the event, it was pure joy from everybody.
Hmm.
And they started to say, oh my gosh, like, this child, he can break horses. Or did you know the pastor said he'd pray over all of our student desks, or all of these things,
Right.
that they could see the community for what it really was, a place where
Sure.
we were all working together, and there was just so many wonderful things about it.
Hmm.
So I feel like first we had to have those kind of experiences to then have harder conversations about, okay, why are we just saying this child is 2 years behind? Let's focus on what he brings to the table and how can we make it stronger.
Right. And that's important. And when you look at this, and the reason why I'm really excited about having you on the show, when you think about envisioning something, are one of the rare breed of principals who have been in low income situations and higher income situations to implement, initiatives that help improve the academic achievement of the school. So when you're envisioning, talk to us about the thought process based off of the different kind of situations, because like you said, in the lower income situations there's a real big deficit approach that kind of prevails the building, right? But
Right.
now that you're in another situation, how did you have to think about that differently?
So I would say in my first situation, there was an automatic sense of urgency. And so,
Sure.
because if your kids were not successful, it was obvious. If they dropped out of
Hmm.
school, we saw them. So, but in this situation, it can look like our scores that we're doing really well,
Right.
and people can become complacent, thinking, "Oh, well, this is
Yep.
fine." 90% of my
Sure.
students are doing well, until we really. So it's more of creating that sense of urgency for all students to be successful. Or another passion of mine is that we're a 5th and 6th grade campus, and you
Mm-hmm.
have to be in an advanced math course by 6th grade in order to take algebra by 8th grade, which opens up all the
Right.
high school math classes. So
Of course.
we need to put kids in that class. We don't want to be the gatekeeper of a
Right.
potential advanced math class. So in this situation, it's looking at things more from a different lens of, okay, who are in those classes? And some parents they know that they can just request it, even if maybe their child didn't test in for it, but they
Sure.
understand the importance of it. So how are we advocating for other families who may not be aware of that situation?
Yeah,
So
that
it's
kind of
different.
unspoken rule. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Both places were
So,
different. And I feel like also in elementary, because there was a sense of urgency, the conversations we had with each other were just real all the time. We mean,
right.
we didn't have time to sugarcoat stuff. We didn't have time for our feelings to be heard. The data was the data. We just had to go with it. Whereas I've had to learn maybe a different approach with working with people and understanding that data can be very personal for some people. And
Sure.
it's just a different situation.
Right, right. So when you think about that, then let's talk through, because I know of your 30-year career, you've had a lot of successes and you faced some challenges as well. Some anticipated, some not anticipated as well. So talk to us about some of the major challenges that you faced in leading these schools that were expected and not expected, and how do you have to handle that as the school leader as you're facilitating school turnaround?
So the first school, this is, I mean, just gonna be completely honest here,
Sure.
but we
Yeah,
were
that's what
having
we want you to do. That's why we're having this conversation.
okay.
Let's talk about it.
Okay, so we were actually, it was my first year as principal there, and we were having a conversation about needing to have a larger space for in-school suspension. And it was a
Hmm.
teacher who said, I think
Right.
we're looking at this the wrong way. Like, why are we trying to create more space? So it was those conversations that we had on the fly all the time about what are we here for? What's our purpose? Um,
Sure.
but then, so the challenge, well, one, I mean, I was the first white principal at the
Hmm.
school, and I
Right.
had not been an assistant principal. I had other leadership roles. So really, I was naive and young, and the school probably deserved better, like somebody who had more experience or somebody
Hmm.
um, who knew. So I was just open. I worked with the
Sure.
NAACP. I worked with different school board members. Like, we had a very strong relationship of what is it, because I knew that there was so much I didn't know, if that makes sense, in
Hmm.
that situation. But
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
challenging. It was a challenging
Sure. Sure.
couple years. But then I would say, in the situation that I'm in now, I truly believe that whatever's happening in the outside world comes into the building. And so the
Sure.
social, political types of things, I wasn't necessarily expecting that.
Yeah.
Um, when like police brutality and elections and all of those things were happening, kids are hearing it, obviously. So they come in
Of
heated.
course.
And it was just
Of
a
course.
different situation than I had ever experienced before. So now I'm aware, okay, this could possibly, be a potential concern. But I
Yeah.
would say those were the challenges in the two different places. I mean, I had a lot of other challenges too, but
Yeah. Yeah, those are things that just kind of stand out to you. So a takeaway from that is that for a person that may be watching, as the leader, you are going to face some things that you just don't plan for, right?
right.
That are totally outside of the school, but you have to deal with, as you move the school forward and facilitate school turnaround as well. So, and I'm glad you raised that, because one thing I do know about you over the years, you have implemented a number of initiatives at the school that have been successful, right? So, in your previous school, current school. So, talk to us so our viewing audience can know, how do you go about with things that you implement around monitoring and evaluating those initiatives? Because we talk so much about what is the data saying, but how do you know as the leader that we're making progress and we are successful? Talk to us about that.
So we use all types of data. Obviously, we have our standardized test
Sure.
data, but we use like map data. We different things. So one of the areas um, in my current school is that there will be fifth graders who will test into algebra. And so how are we growing them a year as well?
Right.
And then there are
Right.
kids who may be behind. How are we growing them? So I feel like we are constantly looking at that data. We meet individually with students and create visual graphs, something that came from my husband, who's a psychologist. He says,
Right. Right.
they have to see that they're improving and growing, even if they might not be at that point yet. We need to
Yep.
encourage and show them that. Um, so I feel in our current situation, like even all of our initiatives are posted in the meeting room where all the teachers meet, and it's a huge visual, and we are able to look at it, but then talk about it. How are we doing in this area? What do we need to improve upon? How are we doing with our student growth? I mean, we have kids who perform really well, but like I said, they may not make a year's growth. And I think it's more important that everybody grows versus
Yeah.
just doing well on an assessment.
And
So,
then who do you involve, like when you're monitoring or evaluating success of initiatives? Talk to us a little bit for persons that may be watching, members of your team that are involved. I know ultimately a final decision may rest with you, but I know you like to get the feedback and input of others on your team. So give us an example of some people that you're involved to kind of make decisions around success and monitoring initiatives.
okay, so we have two assistant principals,
Okay.
two instructional coaches. We have department heads. So we sit in on their department meetings. There's always a data piece. What do we do if students have already mastered this content? How are we addressing it? Or students who haven't mastered the content, or how did your scores looked very different on your assessment than mine? Those kind of conversations, which involves all of us. So we each are sitting in different meetings. Um, but really, it takes everybody. The
Sure.
buy-in. I mean, we have a mentorship program where we are working with students who just need a little bit more support and push. And our head custodian is one of the best ones on our campus. I mean, she motivates, she builds
Right.
relationships, she talks to them. So I feel like it's all of us constantly working with students. And like I said, we do have students who perform really high, but they also need to make a year's growth as well. So it's working with everybody.
Right. So from the custodian to all the other stakeholders that you named, all of those are part of the team that
Right.
really is valuable for you in making decisions about things, and they're all involved and bought into the process as well. Now, one thing I hear from educators that I know have done well, and you mentioned it earlier, but I want to just go one level deeper on it, is involving the community, right? Because that's a skill set that's not necessarily taught in school, right?
Right.
And some of what you mentioned before, you learn through necessity as well. But talk about now with 30 years of experience under your belt, how do you strategize getting the school community, students, families, community members, and all these people to the table to rally around the school to impact school improvement as well?
Well, the first experience, it was a neighborhood school, so that was pretty easy to get everybody there, to get
Of course.
everybody, involved. And like I said, the different churches around, everybody was so supportive. Everybody wants our kids to succeed and to do, actually, we all want our kids to do better than we did, probably. We want more for them. In the school I'm in now, so we have 19 buses. So we have kids from all over. And some parents will say, you're practically in Houston, because our school
Right,
is
right.
further out. But so it's harder. We have to think of different locations to hold events and meet the needs. When we had a big hot dog supper type thing, And we needed to replicate that in several different ways in different areas, because it wasn't fair for some kids to be able to walk over here and be able to enjoy, but others didn't have access. So I think accessibility is one of the things that we think about. But then just the people. I mean, we have a great community here.
Right.
I think back to COVID, we got to know the manager at HEB really well, because we were still
Right.
doing the backpack programs for our students who needed food. And there was a limit to how much we could have. And he has lifted the limit. He understood what our purpose was. So I feel like there's all these key people who may not even have kids in the school district, but they're so supportive of our mission.
Right.
And
And that's important. I mean, and for our viewing audience, I know because that's a Texas thing, HEB, that's
oh
the
yeah, right.
local grocery store. But I think that's important. That's an important example of how you get the school community involved around, school turnaround efforts. And that's why I say you've been a person that has been on the cutting edge of getting community involved in it. I'm really proud of you with that. Now, before we let you go in our last few minutes, I want to dig into your 30 years of wisdom in doing this work, and let's talk through, if others are watching, there may be a new school leader or a new educator or about to take on some school turnaround work. What recommendations, based on your experience, what advice or recommendations would you give to school leaders who may be working in a low performing situation, or a situation that the school is performing, but there could be complacency about to set in? What advice would you share with them?
I would say first, the pivotal shift happened with us when we started to look at ourselves and our own biases and our own ways that that was impacting our beliefs and what students were able to achieve. So I think if you are in a school with underperforming students, we need to look at ourselves first.
Okay.
And in the one situation, like I said, we had those conversations all the time. In my current situation, we started off with things like, I believe homework is necessary, and you had to choose a side, and
Mm-hmm.
move towards, I believe there's equity at PT,
Okay.
and they had
Okay.
to choose a side. So I feel like having those conversations is important. Um, I, when I was in my graduate program, I had Dr. Sergiovanni, and he
Mm-hmm.
really talked about moral leadership. And I think
Right.
making ethical decisions and being true to those values is so critical as well, because as stress starts to happen, you could make you need to be rooted in your decision of why you're making these decisions. I feel that that's important. Um, Humility goes a long way. So I think
Mm-hmm.
the importance of being open and honest about your mistakes as a leader. I tell people that, like, this is on me. I'm sorry this happened. I take responsibility for it. Um, and then a couple more things. I think you got to love
Yeah,
the people
sure.
that you work with, because the job is hard. It doesn't matter
Yes, it is.
which environment you're in. It is a hard job. So you have to really show them love and care and support. And I guess my final recommendation would just be assume positive intent. That's something
Mm-hmm.
that has helped me with, if there's an angry parent, if there's an angry teacher, if there's an upset
Sure.
child, like, assume positive intent. And even though in the moment it may be hard, but after I've had time to reflect, there's truth in every conversation. There is truth.
Right.
So
Right.
it's about me taking that feedback and growing, um, and becoming better.
And that's powerful. I mean, having time to reflect, to think about what that person is bringing to the table as
Right.
well. Now, two other items really quick I wanted to ask you about. In your time in doing this as a school leader, how did you view professional development, not only for the staff, right, but also for yourself? Because we all have to grow in this work and continue to get better. So, how did you kind of visualize that from your seat?
So with the staff, I felt like, we want students to have voice. I felt like staff needs to have voice in their professional development as well. We try to do some experiential things.
Yeah.
like where there's choice, but like we ask them to take part in different activities that would take them out of their comfort zone, just to sort of have a better understanding of maybe what their students have been feeling. Um, for me, it's constantly reading, it's watching podcasts and different things, because
Sure.
I felt like I I just never felt like I had enough information to do the best job possible. And
Sure.
currently back in school for that same reason. Like I feel like you got to continue to learn and grow. Um, I don't know. Did it?
Yeah, yeah, and that's fine. And with that professional development, because a lot of times most people don't think about the professional development they need as an individual when they're
Right.
leading these efforts, right? Because they're so consumed with what's going on around them as well. So, my final question for you, and then we'll let you share any additional thoughts. I want to ask you about sustainability. I know as a leader, it kind of gets into the legacy part of this work, right? Because I know from your previous situation, your legacy is still there, and I do know that very clearly. You created a lasting legacy in that building, and I know you have created a legacy in your current situation. So, talk to us about how you think about sustainability of the vision that you've started, even if you're not there to see it, in the future. So, because a lot of people don't think about the sustainability piece of this work, because we know of efforts that may have started but then ended when that leader leaves as
Right.
well. So, talk to us about sustainability if you can.
Well, one, I think you have to love your job because you need people who are younger to look towards leadership opportunities
Right.
just to keep it going. But I have the buy-in of the team. Like so many of our initiatives or things we've tried haven't come from me. I mean, I think about my first experience. We had Saturday school. That was not my idea. It was someone
Right.
else's idea, but it became this place where high school, everybody could come, use our technology, get support from teachers. So the biggest thing is that you work with really great people who encourage and buy in to the mission, and they kind of roll with it. So that's where I feel like it wouldn't end with me. This isn't. I don't think I've started an initiative that I just believed in. I don't think that would go well. I did actually. I
Right.
started something at my previous school. That again, I think it was my first year. I don't recommend this. So I had this great plan, and I created a binder, and it was what you would do during this 90-minute instructional model.
Right.
Everybody was like, "That just collected dust, Kelly. That
Right.
collected dust." But again,
Right.
because that was my own thing,
Uh-huh.
um, and I realized quickly, no, it can't just be my thing. It's got to be what everybody believes in. So I feel like
Exactly.
sustainability happens because they've all bought into it, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that's important. That's important. So getting that buy-in of the staff around initiatives that you want to do in the schools. So finally, for anybody that's watching, there may be some other advice that you would want to share with them around this work. What comes to mind when if somebody's taking on this work in this current day in this current climate? What would you share with them around some things that they need to consider?
One thing would be to hire well. I
Okay.
think I even see in my colleagues there that they want the positions filled because they're getting ready for their summer break. And
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer you better hire well. It may
Yeah.
take a little while to get that position filled. And I worked with our school psychologist actually, and he designed questions that had nothing to do with teaching, but it was really about
Sure.
how do you handle stress and those kind of things. And I think, like, I can't say it enough that this job is hard. Teaching is hard. So
Right.
I would say hire well because that if you make a poor choice there, that's going to add a lot more work to your plate, if you know what I'm saying.
Exactly.
And I can't say enough the importance of pouring into the relationship building with staff, with families, with obviously students, with community members. That when there's something like when I'm in a pinch, those people have been the people that have come and supported and helped me out. And it's because of the relationships that we have with each other. Sometimes I think, even with me still to this day, we can get so task oriented that we
Yeah,
forget, okay, put this down and just go ask that person how they're feeling today. That goes a long way.
sure.
So those types of things as well. Um, and love the job. Again, like
Yeah,
you get to work with kids. It's the best thing in the world. Kids are
of course.
wonderful. Um, but I do, and I think coming together as a team can solve anything,
Right,
any
right.
issue, yeah.
Well, that's great. I mean, you've shared a lot of wisdom with us today. I think for persons that are watching, they'll really take hold to a lot of the things that you said to help keep them going forward in this work. So I want to thank you so much for your valuable time. I really appreciate you just sharing with us as well. So we will definitely. Put this podcast out far and wide because you shared so many valuable things with us today. So just thank you for being with us today as well.
Thank you so
Okay.
much for having me. It's good to
Oh,
see
no
you.
problem. No problem.